In the world of superhero games, Marvel really hasn't had the upper hand compared to DC with their Arkham series. In fact, the best Marvel game to come out in a while was Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 years ago, showing that Marvel can make games that can compete with the quality DC has been pushing out. And with the success of Spider-Man, fans have been looking forward to the future of Marvel gaming with the anticipated Spider-Man sequel and the Avengers game that split the fanbase 50-50 on whether it will be good. However, besides Spider-Man and the Avengers, fans might have something to look forward to during the upcoming generation of consoles involving characters that don't necessarily classify as Avengers, but a character like Spider-Man and another a part of a different Marvel team, which according to new leaks, the future of Marvel games could also include a solo Daredevil game and a solo Wolverine game, and let's discuss these leaks. So just like the previous Spider-Man sequel leaks I covered in 2 separate videos, there's no certainty to how true this information is, with these leaks coming from an anonymous user on 4chan, so take this as you will. However, in this video I'll be breaking down the information and giving my thoughts on it. This originated on 4chan not too long ago, with it being that Marvel is licensing out separate games starring Daredevil and Wolverine that's said to be a mix of Spider-Man PS4, Arkham, and reminiscent of the God of War series. The user who posted the supposed leaks claims to have gotten the information from a close source to Marvel Games, who gave information on Spider-Man PS4 and the Avengers game, which the user chooses not to provide information to. Beginning with the first bullet of this post, Marvel is working on a single-player narrative Daredevil game releasing either late 2021 or 2022 across all platforms besides the Switch, which means Switch users would have to make their own Daredevil costume in Animal Crossing. Now, what's interesting about this bullet point is the potential release date if this leak is actually true. According to the Spider-Man PS5 leaks, that game is supposed to come out holiday 2021, and I honestly don't see Marvel releasing 2 games in the same window, even if one is console exclusive. If this turns out to be true, I would expect it to release in 2022. I'm thinking a summer release date would be good if Spider-Man PS5 follows the same update cycle it did for the previous game. All content besides a promotional suit upgrade was over in the spring. Daredevil could take over in the second half of 2022. Up next, the user provides information on where the game will take place, which is a bit odd considering the character is Daredevil. The game will take place in present-day Chicago and serve as a noir-style detective game. Now, I like Daredevil a lot. He's my second favorite superhero, and the second comic book film I ever saw was the 2003 movie, but I'm not very familiar with his comic book history, and I don't ever hear anyone associating the character with Chicago. Daredevil is Hell's Kitchen. This would be like making a Spider-Man game and putting the character in LA. That's not how it works. And although I don't think it's right for Daredevil to take place in anywhere other than New York, there's no reason to believe why it can't work. Chicago is one of the biggest cities in the US and a bit similar to New York. I believe this would be the first time in a Marvel game we've had somewhere other than New York to explore, and I'm not counting the Lego games. And although Daredevil belongs in Hell's Kitchen, there's no denying a next-gen Chirac would be amazing to explore, and I also feel like certain parts of the city would fit Daredevil's aesthetic. Maybe the thing about these potential upcoming Marvel games is that each character would have its own city. Either way, this bit of information is interesting, and let me know how you feel about the game potentially taking place in Chicago. Moving on, the user mentions the combat system for the Daredevil game being similar to Arkham and Mad Max, with extra abilities that are customizable through a skill tree. Throughout recent years, it seems like every game has had some sort of Arkham style combat, and I think if it's gonna work for any character, it's gonna work for Daredevil. The character is similar to Batman, and I would also love to see something that could relate to Daredevil's enhanced abilities, like the visuals in the 2003 movie, which seems to relate to the next bullet point, being that the game will feature an echolocation feature similar to the detective mode in Arkham that will slow down combat and offer hints throughout free roaming that relate to the current mission or side mission. With it being said that the game will be a noir style detective game, I expect this, and hopefully the system works well, because if memory serves me correctly, the detective feature in Arkham City was a pain, the only Arkham game I played. The next bit of information relates to the game's potential villain, an older but new one to the game, Bullseye. If you're going to make a Daredevil game, you either get Bullseye or the Kingpin as the main villain. The only villain mentioned in this post is Bullseye, but if this game ends up happening, I want to see Stiltman. Just imagine chasing the character throughout the city. According to this post, Daredevil has been around for a while, similar to how Spider-Man was in his game, but this version of Bullseye is an older version who's new to the world. I'd imagine the game's story involves Daredevil investigating Bullseye's rise to power throughout the city, and while I would like to see the Kingpin appear in this game, if a sequel were to happen, there's no way he isn't the villain of that game. Kingpin and Bullseye are Daredevil's greatest villains, and having both in the game wouldn't leave much room to expand on if a sequel sequel were to happen, if this game even happens. Relating back to the city, the user mentions the city being 65 square miles, taking full advantage of the next-gen SSD and other console capabilities, tripling the size of Insomniac City. Now, I'm not sure how believable I find this, however, with the capabilities of the PS5, I wouldn't rule it out. Mentioned in the Spider-Man PS5 leaks is the expansion of Queens and Brooklyn, but we'll have to wait and see what the future holds. However, something we should expect for the character of Daredevil, the free roaming will only be available at night, with there being minimal missions taking place during the day. Also mentioned is that the story will impact the game's weather and time similar to Spider-Man. A noir style game is expected to take place during the night, and Chicago would look absolutely beautiful at night on the next gen platforms. With the mention of weather, I want there to be a snowy Chicago during the nighttime. With the game also taking place primarily at night, that just means that the daytime or golden hour sections will be extra special, and hopefully we can get a taste of free roaming at these times during specific levels. I'd imagine once the story is complete, the game would be locked into night mode. And with that, the information just discussed wraps up the Daredevil section of this post, which moves us into the Wolverine section of the post, only one bullet point. Directly from the user, bonus leak, early development has begun on Marvel's Wolverine title, but unlike Marvel's Daredevil, it will not be an open world game and will instead be more God of War PS4-esque. Wouldn't expect a release for 2 to 3 years though, so I'm not sure if the minimal amount of information on this potential Wolverine title is meant to make the post more believable or thrown in there to fuck with everybody, but from the sound of it, the game will be linear and play similar to the God of War series. Even without the mention of this game being linear, I would expect the game to be linear. I honestly don't know how a Wolverine game would work as a free roaming game, especially with his traversal and locations the character is associated with, although that could change considering the potential Daredevil game will take place in Chicago. Unlike Daredevil, Wolverine has had his own video games in the past, with the character's last game being a movie tie-in game for the first Wolverine film that I haven't played but I hear is good. And there's also been a plethora of X-Men games in the past, with my personal favorite being X-Men Next Dimension. Overall, there isn't much to talk about with the Wolverine aspect of this post due to the minimal information. I think the character could hold his own video game, and maybe the story will involve something related to his days before joining the X-Men. As far as developers go, the user doesn't mention who is working with Marvel games on these projects, but one developer I'd like to see working on the Daredevil game is Sucker Punch due to their work on the Infamous games, but with the game being rumored for all platforms, I doubt it happens. I'd also think EA could work good on the Wolverine game given their work on Jedi Fallen Order, but to be honest, I'm not the best when it comes to developers. Maybe you guys can leave suggestions below. So with that, the entire 4chan post has been covered. Again, these supposed leaks could be true or total BS. Either way, it leaves interesting room for discussion. Aside from Spider-Man, I'd say the next best character for a Marvel game is Daredevil due to the similarities between the characters. There hasn't been a proper Daredevil game in the past and never a free roaming one, and I believe the character's style of play and traversal would be something that could rival Arkham more than Spider-Man. With the Wolverine game, I could take or leave it. Personally, I would rather see a full-on X-Men game similar to the Avengers upcoming game, but that's not to say a God of War style Wolverine game can't work. I just think it would be better to have an X-Men game over one character. I'd have to say the two main features I'd be looking forward to with these potential games is Daredevil taking place in Chicago and free roaming the city. While I don't think Daredevil should be in Chicago, it would be interesting and a great place to explore. So let me know what you guys think of the information discussed in this video. Do you believe it to be true? And between both games, which would you rather play? And as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow my social medias, hit that like button, and I will see you guys again in my next video.